composition of Papanasam 7, rendered by Neyveli Santanagopal.
Pirabavaram daru pemmane, pirabavaram daru pemmane, pirabavaram daru pemmane, pirabavaram daru pemmane, pirabavaram daru pemmane. Pirabavaram taru Pirabavaram taru Iraiva marubadi Pirabavaram taru Iraiva marubadi Pirabavaram taru Pirandalu Tiruvadi Maravaram taru Manila Midinil Pirabavaram taru Pirandalum Tiruvadi Maravaram taru Manila Midinil Pirabavaram taru Tamare Pirabavaram taru Parvati Neya Bhakta Sagaya Parvati Neya Bhakta Sagaya Bandamarada Bandarultada Parvati Neya Bhakta Sagaya Bandamarada Bandarultada Mundavine Gora Chinta Pulam Tira Mundavine Gora Chinta Pulam Tira Mundavine Gora Chinta Pulam Tira Mundavine Chinta Pulam Tira Yendayun Padara Vindam Tunai Sara Yendayun Padara Vindam Tunai Sara Pirabavaram taru Pemmane Pirabavaram taru
Friends, we combine two events today. A book titled Unusual Essays of an Unknown Sri Vaishnava will be released. The author is Mr. M.K.Sudarshan. 4 distinguished guests will speak besides the author. The second event of the morning will be a talk on humor in everyday life. The speaker is R. Sekharan, Secretary of the Triplicane Humor Club. Let me briefly introduce the participants of the first event. First, a few words about the book and the author. Unusual Essays of an Unknown Sri Vaishnava is 720 pages long. It is a compilation of what the author describes as non-scholastic blogs written over 20 years. They deal with many facets of Sri Vaishnava philosophy and theology. The book is Mr. Sudarshan's tribute to Sri Ramanujacharya on his 1000th birth anniversary. Mr. Sudarshan is a chartered accountant with a 35-year corporate career in India and abroad, including stints for more than 20 years in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. He hails from a Tamil Iyengar family with ancestral roots in Tirupati. His mother, the late Mani Krishna Swami, was an illustrious Carnatic music vocalist. Today, after retirement, he pursues his interests in Indian philosophy, world history, comparative religious studies, Carnatic music, Hindu temples in India, and religious tourism. Today's chief guest is Mrs. Sheila Balaji of the TVS Group. She is the chairperson of the Aim for Seva and the Swami Dayananda Educational Trust. She organized relief in a big way for tsunami victims in Nagapatnam. She helps run schools, free student hostels, healthcare and vocational studies centers in the village of Manjakudi, the birthplace of Swami Dayananda Saraswati, and other villages. She has helped transform the lives of thousands of people in rural India. She has written several books on Vedanta and has chronicled the life of her guru. Mr. K. Vaidyanath is a former executive director of ITC Limited. He did his graduate degree from Loyola College, Chennai, and an MBA from XLRI, Jamshedpur. In his 35-year career with the ITC, he handled responsibilities relating to finance, IT, and corporate communications, besides businesses such as paperboards and packaging. Mr. Vaidyanath has a deep and abiding interest in Vedanta, kindled in his school days by his exposure to Swami Chinmayananda. Mr. Saragopan Iyengar is a retired banker and the editor of Sri Narasimha Priya, the official magazine of the Sri Ahobila Math. He has been trained in the Vedas and the scriptures by eminent Sri Vaishnava acharyas. The Srimad Narayana is his special area of scholarship. Several of his 400-odd articles, known for their erudition, are devoted to various facets of this epic. His book, The Choice is Yours, published in 2005, was widely acclaimed. He has since authored 4 more books of essays, including a biography on the 45th pontiff of the Ahobila Math. Shekhar Swami is the group CEO of the R.K. Swami BBDO and Hansa companies, which operate in India and the US. He is the second son of the late ad wizard R.K. Swami, whose contribution to Vaishnavite causes is well known. He has been described by an international magazine as one of the top 30 global innovators. Shekhar Swami has an MS from Northwestern University in the US and an MBA from the University of Delhi. He and M.K.Sudarshan were classmates during their BCom program at Loyola College, Chennai. Shekhar has been working as an adjunct faculty at Northwestern University in the US for 18 years. The university inducted him into its Alumni Hall of Achievement in 2002. Friends, it's time for launch of the book. May I request the chief guest, Mrs. Sheila Balaji, to release the book and hand over the first copy to Mr. K. Vaidyanath. May I request Mrs. Balaji to address the gathering?
Dignitaries on the dais, and ladies and gentlemen, namaskaram. When Mr. Sudarshan asked me to come and be the chief guest for this occasion, I had to ask him why. What was the reason? I am not a Sri Vaishnava scholar, although I am born into a Sri Vaishnava family and married into a Sri Vaishnava family. But he said, he said a few things, but I was not convinced. Still, I'm here, and and I have gone through some parts of the book, not fully, because 720 pages is quite daunting to go through it at one stretch. But it's excellently written, and such a lovely style of English. What a command of language Mr. Sudarshan has got. And it sort of, it really makes you go along with him and kindles our own interest to delve further into our roots, be it Sri Vaishnava or Smartha or whatever roots we are from. I think he really leads us into it and takes us there. And I must commend the language and the choice of topics. He starts off first very gently. He talks about the 24-year quote-unquote cultural exile that he has been away from this country. And then when he goes, but because of his impeccable lineage, tracing his ancestry to none less than Sri Tirumalai Nambihal of Tirupati, and then ably tutored by his mother and guided by his father to no other person than Mukkur Sri Lakshmi Narasimhacharyar, who I think put that spark inside him. So to me, that seems to be the changing point in his life, because he pursued that. Already the latent interest was there, plus he was born into this family, and then he had this wide erudition, such language, and when he's met his Acharya, I think that was the game changer in his life, as far as I can see as a lay reader. And from then, he's been with Mukkur Swami, learning, studying from him. And you can see to what depth a guru can do to one's life. That you can't, this kind of a spiritual transformation does not come by just reading or just looking around and trying to think for oneself. This kind of inner transformation, which is nothing short, as J. Krishnamurti always says, inner revolution. That inner revolution takes place only because of a guru, of an acharya. And that acharya and the student meeting is a moment already planned in history. It's not as though one wills it, but the acharya and the student meeting is very, very evocative moment. And that was a moment, to me, I feel, which has transformed Sri Sudarshan. And then comes a whole, what shall I say, list of blogs, which is now, of course, published in this book. When he goes through and looks into, for example, the plentifulness of America, the abundance of water, which we don't have in Chennai. And then he quotes appropriately Apohishta and all that, and the Vedic mantras. Then in certain other areas, when he goes to Giza and the pyramids, then he talks about, then he says it's a kind of a shmashanam or a cenotaph and samadhi, and then he feels almost his Vaishnava roots wants him to have a bath to cleanse himself after having visited it. So and then he quotes liberally from the Prabandhams, Swami Deshikan's Stotrams, and from the Vedas. So you have a tremendous cross-references, literally a reference, I would say like an encyclopedia. Then when he talks about, and then you see also his large reading material that he has gathered over the years. He talks about Mozart, he compares Mozart, his easy, creative, innocent joy of his creation versus the very studied measure of Beethoven. Then he talks about Wordsworth and he talks about Camus, and then he says one point, very important one. We talk about the Vedas being apaurusheyam, that it is not authored by any one person. It's not human. And our rishis, the mantra drashtaraha, they intuited it because it was all over and brought out the Vedas. Similarly, Mozart seemed to have plucked, according to Sudarshan, the notes from the air and brought it out. That's the joy that you see in Mozart's music. And that I thought was very beautifully said. And you know, it's so topical that we have this book at this point. I would say the zeitgeist of today, with a new India, there's a resurgence. There's no longer that hesitancy to accept we are Hindus. We have a rich lineage, which 50 years ago, I think we would be quite reluctant and even apologetic to say, I'm a Hindu. I think today we don't have that. And so this book has come at the right moment with a change in the government, a change in the whole attitude of the spirit of this country. And it's extremely topical. And another point which I just should like to say is that while we talk about the transformation and we talk about the important role of a guru, why I keep looking at this book from the eyes of a transformed individual is because in my personal journey, my guru, Swami Dayananda Saraswati Ji, has been instrumental in being a game changer in my life. So I seem to see in this a similar kind of an epiphany, an echo in that note. And I must thank you, Sri Sudarshan, for honoring me by asking me to release such a book, which is a book of inspiration. It's a book of grace. Page after page, the grace of a guru speaks to you. It's a book of blessing. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Balaji. May I request Mr. K. Vaidyanath to speak.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and namaskaram. There is a distinct disadvantage in being the second speaker, because the first one has already said everything that has to be said on the subject. But I must confess that, unlike Mrs. Balaji, when Sudarshan asked me to speak at this occasion, I must confess I did not ask him why me. Because I assumed that the others on the dais must be people like me, who's probably just given it a superficial read and pretend to be some kind of competent authority on the subject. But after having seen the presence here on the dais, I feel dwarfed. Because there are mighty, towering subject matter experts here. So please forgive me if I tend to be anything other than what this occasion deserves. I'm going to talk about this book purely from my personal angle, from my personal subjective response to the book. First of all, I want to say upfront that it's an absolutely brilliant book. I thoroughly enjoyed reading every page of this book. And I'm not exaggerating, because to hold the attention of the reader across 700 pages is not an easy task. Especially if you're dealing with a subject like philosophy or religion, which are as it is beginning with a handicap of being dry subjects. But I must say, Sudarshan has accomplished virtually the impossible. But in this book, it is highly readable, it's very appealing, and like I said, I've kind of enjoyed reading every page of that book. Since we have a very short time, I'd like to straight away focus on the 4 things that I'd like to talk about this book, more for the interest of other lay persons like me who may not have read this book so far. See, first of all, the style aspect. As Mrs. Balaji pointed out, Sudarshan is an absolute gifted writer. His prose is poetic. His language is evocative. His expressions are both precise and very, very focused. I mean, that kind of combination is a very rare combination of writing skills, that you're able to operate on all these 3 dimensions of what constitutes good writing. And I think it is primarily the style in which it is written that makes this book so readable. The second aspect of the style that I liked here was that he deploys multiple formats in the book. There are narratives, plain, straightforward narratives like articles. And then there is a short story. So beautiful short story inspired by the Ramayana, where there is a dialogue taking place between Lord Rama and Lakshmana. And it so beautifully and evocatively brings out the topic that they are discussing. And I thought it was a brilliant idea to use the short story format for it, because it gives you that creative and poetic license to express a larger-than-life situation. Similarly, he's got another format where in one of the chapters, it is actually a courtroom drama, where a defense lawyer and a prosecutor are battling each other on behalf of their respective clients, making out their case. And these lawyers are not fictitious characters. They're real human beings in flesh and blood. In fact, they are sitting right here. Mr. Iyengar is the defense lawyer in that chapter, and Sudarshan himself is the prosecutor. But I thought that platform of a personal dialogue between the lawyers and the judge has been very effectively used to pack that subject with passion. Because the subject is a very complex question of ethics relating to Sri Sita's Agni Pariksha in the Ramayana. And this has been beautifully done because both the lawyers managed to pack into their deliveries their great passion for the subject, their great devotion for Lord Rama, and yet make out their respective points very distinctly. Coming to the content of the book, there are two aspects that struck me. One is that it is not a kind of straightforward exposition on Vedanta. It is not a theoretical discourse on the subject. It is a product of an identity crisis. As Sudarshan himself says in his preamble to the book, that he was caught in this bind in his midlife, something like a midlife crisis of a very different order, where he felt there was a huge gap between his identity as a Vaishnavite and what he was really experiencing in life. And the fact that he had moved away from his moorings and roots was a great source of distress for him. And he wanted to rediscover himself and his roots, and that is when he decided to pursue Vedantic studies. And having been an NRI at that time, he didn't have the luxury of a guru. So he set himself an agenda, a study schedule, and launched into self-study. And that itself is a huge and mammoth task, given the size of the arena and the complexity of the subject. But I think, like Mrs. Balaji pointed out, at some later stage he did find a kind of friend, philosopher and guide in Mukur Swamiji, who guided him. And he talks about the 9 ground rules that he set for him in his pursuit of the Vedantic studies. So I think that is what, in terms of the content, that's what makes this book absolutely different from any other book on the subject. And I think that is also going to be the reason why it will appeal to a very broad cross-section of people. Not just to Vaishnavites, to whom of course it will appeal, given the subject, but even they will find new insights in this book to old subjects, old topics. Similarly, the non-Vaishnavites, I think, will find it even more appealing, because this is an introduction, a breathtaking introduction to the entire landscape of Vaishnava philosophy. The other thing that struck me about the content of this book is that, again, it's broad spectrum in its coverage. It is talking about the Upanishadic Vedantic principles. Then it talks about the philosophical dimensions of Ramayana and Mahabharata. Then it goes into Tirupavai, the Divya Prabandhams, the Bhagavad Gita itself. So you get the entire gamut of not just the Vaishnava philosophy, but the Advaita philosophy also, the Vedantic philosophy, in a book which is all covered in an extremely easy to read and highly readable fashion. And that's what makes the content of this book very rich. In terms of its appeal, I think beyond the two classes that I talked about, the Vaishnavites and the non-Vaishnavites, I think it will appeal greatly to the so-called next generation. I mean, I'm talking about people who are in the mid-30s to mid-40s. Again, most of them today are like what Sudarshan was 2 decades ago. Not in touch with their moorings, hardly any introduction to this rich heritage of the country. All because A, they don't know the language. Sanskrit is not known to people. Tamil is even rarer. Secondly, there are no books which are written in this style which can appeal to a lay person in a highly readable fashion so that it arouses your curiosity to go on and read. I think it will appeal to the next generation of readers very effectively. And if again, the style itself contributes to that. I mean, if you look at the chapter headings, the chapter titles, they've been crafted very creatively. They are all designed to arouse your curiosity. And you want to see what's in the chapter. And once you begin to read it, then you don't want to put it down until you finish it. Because at each paragraph, there is a sense of anticipation, and you're waiting to see what is going to unfold. So I think this is the crux of the book, its readability, because of the way it's written. Lastly, I want to conclude by saying that it would be an immense contribution from somebody like Sudarshan if he were to venture to write a sequel to this book. Because at the end of reading this book, one thing that I missed, and of course which could not have been covered in a book of this size because it's already 700 pages, is that for slightly more serious students of the subject, if he could have taken us to the next step and give us more analytical insights into Ramanujacharya's philosophy, and maybe including a comparative analysis of how it fares against Advaita, Adi Shankara's Advaita, and most importantly, how does a lay person, very much like what he was some time ago, guruless, right, and engaged in life 100% of the time, 24/7, how does he make progress in this spiritual pursuit? You know, how does he transform these thoughts and principles into his daily life? And how can he significantly gain from that in terms of personal transformation? I think this could be a great subject for his next book. I'm looking forward to this from Sudarshan. So finally, I'd like to conclude by congratulating him. Sudarshan, this has been an extremely fitting tribute to Ramanujacharya in his millennial birth centenary, which falls this year. An absolutely fitting tribute. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Vaidyanathan. I now request Mr. Sadagopan Iyengar to address the gathering.
Good morning, everybody. See, Mr. Vaidyanathan was telling you about the difficulties of the second speaker. Just imagine what it would be like to be the third speaker, especially when the people before you have practically said everything you wanted to say. So, till I collect my thoughts, let me offer an invocation in a Vedic mantra, which is a prayer for everybody's welfare, for the gods to keep our eyes, ears, sight, and all our faculties in good shape. And those who know the mantra may join in, others may listen. And let me add that this is one of the most favorite mantras of Mukku Lakshmi Narasimha Swami. Om Bhadram Karnebhih Shrunuyama Devaah Bhadram Pashyema Bharajatraah Sthirairangai Stuštuvagumsastanubhih Yashema Devahitam Yadayuh Swasti na Indro Vriddhashravah Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedah Swasti nastarksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatendra Dhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now, having been blessed with the mantra favorite to Mukku Lakshmi Narasimha, I have regained some of my earlier confidence. And when we get books for review at Nizamapriya, we get a lot of them. So much so we don't have space for many of the books. Though good, they are good. In the case of the Hindu, they have a huge waiting list. But some books you feel like picking up immediately and writing on them. It may be something to do with the cover. It may be something to do with the contents as you see the blurb on the back. It might be something to do with the author whom you already know. In this case, I had absolutely no difficulty in picking up this book for immediate review because of, having entered into a duel, verbal duel or whatever is its written version with Mr. Sudarshan. Of course, I was a very poor, I emerged very poor from the duel, I must say. But this is just to point out his writing style. I mean, both Mr. Vaidyanathan and Mrs. Balaji have said, enough on it, but enough may not be enough at times. So let me add that it's an enviable style. I envy it, to be very frank with you. Because, to write like that requires not only your personal cultivation of a writing style over a period of years, it requires the blessing of a guru, as Mrs. Balaji rightly points out. It is, you are nothing without a guru. I'm sure everyone knows it. I am only carrying cold Newcastle. But then, the importance of a guru at the right point of time in one's life makes or mars one's life. So, Mr. Sudarshan has been extremely fortunate in having found a guru in Mukkur Lakshmana Simachal Swami, who had his own personal voyage of discovery, and he was able to pass on whatever he deemed right in a concise fashion to Mr. Sudarshan. So that, as he himself says, nobody has the time now to sit and read voluminous tomes about our philosophy. These are excellent. Mr. Vaidyanathan suggested that a comparative analysis of Adi Shankara's and Ramanuja's philosophy can be taken up next. I'm sure he is aware, that quite a lot of books have been written on the subject, and most of them lie unopened. Virgin pure. We have quite a few at Nazamupri itself. But see, the point is that the readership has, the profile of readership has changed. I was traveling with somebody from Kumudam the other day. He said they don't publish any more of Chandilian's Kadalpura type of essays anymore. They stick to one page. Otherwise, the reader skips it. So the challenge is how to make the reader first pick up your book and then read at least a couple of pages of it, get interested, and then go through the rest of it. This is why I would say, I would congratulate Mr. Sudarshan on having dared to write. It may not be an appropriate word to use, but then now it requires a daring to write, because you are not sure of the response unless you are totally confident of yourself. And Mr. Sudarshan must have been confident of himself, because he is obviously, I am very glad to say that I understand that the book has met with an excellent response, as it deserves. And one more, please remind me when I am supposed to stop. And one more thing is that in all his generosity, Mr. Sudarshan has donated the entire proceeds of the book to all projects of Sri Ahobilamata, which requires a very large heart. We may, when we visit our gurus, we may part with or we may, when we feel generous, we take a lot of flowers. And when we feel too generous on some occasion of auspicious occasions in the household, like a family marriage or something like that, we donate a couple of thousands or a few thousands or 10,000. But donating the proceeds of a book to one's acharya requires a very large heart, which I'm really proud to say that I'm with such people, because not everybody gets the mindset to do it. So this becomes, buying this book becomes a double-edged this thing. You actually get 3 or 4 fruits for the price of a stone. You buy a book, you buy a good book, you buy a readable book, you buy a book which will last you, unlike the penny thrillers, it will last you, which will last you hardly an hour or so. This will last you at least a month. And the additional incentive is that you can go on reading it. You can pick up any chapter, reread it any number of times. These are all lasting things which Mr. Sudarshan has said, and said very beautifully. I must say, to go back to my earlier statement, because I don't have anything else. To go back to my earlier statement, he has written it in wonderfully rounded sentences which are the envy of any other writer. And I mean, we are used to telegraphic language these days, when we get articles, we keep requesting people for articles. And all we get are written in such a, I mean, I wouldn't like to alienate readers of Nizamipuriya who are present here, but the sort of response we get is really disappointing, so to say. So, having seen all that, Mr. Sudarshan's book comes as a refreshing change. The sentences are really beautiful. They are more than, see, as having written a few pieces myself, I know when we run to a few sentences, we lose sight of, where we began and where we ought to end, whether it is a plural ending or a singular ending or things like that. But Mr. Sudarshan carefully keeps track of the tenses, unlike TV news readers who begin with a plural and end with a singular and do all that sort of havoc. But Mr. Sudarshan's sentences are entirely grammatical. They are beautiful. They are a pleasure to read. I mean, this is not something which you can say about every book. So, I would wholeheartedly recommend, I don't have any vested interest in this, I would wholeheartedly recommend Mr. Sudarshan's book, not only to Vaishnavites, but to everyone who has the habit of reading. And if he doesn't have a habit of reading, let him cultivate it. Thank you then.
Thanks, Mr. Sadagopan Iyengar. I request Mr. Shekhar Swami to speak.
Thank you. Spare a thought to the fourth speaker. I did not ask Sudarshan why he called me to speak, I'll confess. I just told him, "Ni koopudra na vara." Now I understand. He wanted me to be the fourth speaker. It's delightful to be here. I have come from Bombay. And Bombay la vandu Sunday morning 8:30 மணி 9 மணிக்கு யாராவது வர சொன்னா அவன் சான்ஸே இல்லை. நீங்க இத்தனை பேர் வந்திருக்கீங்க, நமஸ்காரம். As the person who introduced me said, I am here because I am Sudarshan's, I've known him for some time, some 44 years when I went back and looked at it. That we lost touch for 35 of those 45 years and recently reconnected is both our loss and subsequent gain. But I'm not here to talk about our friendship. I'm here to talk about the book that he has so incredibly thoughtfully brought out. First of all, congratulations, Da. Fantastic. I can say that to him. I don't have to say Sri Sudarshan, Mr. Sudarshan. I don't have to do all that. அப்படி சொன்னா என்ன துரத்தி விட்டுரும். Now the description to this event said that the book, and I quote, reflect the author's personal struggles to comprehend ancient beliefs and traditions through the prism of modern life. It reflects his personal struggles. I'm sorry, my friend, I disagree. I think the book reflects the author's personal triumph, not struggle. In self-education, his personal triumph in reflecting deeply and understanding the beliefs and traditions of Sri Vaishnavas. This is so evident when one goes through the book even cursorily, although it would be an insult to treat this book cursorily, because there is nothing cursory about this book. This book is obviously a culmination of many, many things. His deep consideration of the subject, his ability to dig deep and connect many dots which otherwise are not visible, his high level of erudition on the subject, his continuous introspection on his roots and the extremely special nature of those roots, his comfort at being who he is and where he is coming from, his generosity in wanting to share it, that which he has discovered for himself with fellow Sri Vaishnavites and others, his anxiety about the future of the community, and his unwillingness to sit idle and just sit and watch it, his joy of the learning and his pleasure, I would even use the word ecstasy, of what he has internalized about Sri Vaishnavism, his sense of personal connection with the Lord, his love and unabiding respect for his Guru, of which many people have referred to here, his exceptional religiosity, and the anchor and compass he has found for himself, for his life. I can indeed go on. The book is important because, I'll say it bluntly, in fact, when we met a few days ago, he said, "Nee enna vanna solluda appadinu." I don't know if he meant it, but what the hell, I take it at face value. Our community has an identity crisis. We really do. And like the fellow Parsis in Bombay, I don't know if you're aware of their story, but I won't go there. We also have a problem of dwindling numbers. The problem started a century and a half ago, in my view. The colonial masters practiced their agenda of domination and exclusion, and cleverly kept the fruits of economic gain, preserving it for the English language. Trouble started, and what was the intended colonialization of the land, in my view, has become a colonization of the mind, and indeed the colonization of the soul. It is not my place today to go into that. This deep distortion, and I can't think of a different word, it is a deep distortion, has today resulted in Sri Vaishnavites preparing their children and applauding their success in America with nary a thought to what they have given up, which reminds me of a story. It's a short story. There was an old man, his boy, and a donkey. They were going to town. Now the old man said, he put the boy on the donkey and he said, "Nee donkey lo kandva, na unnoda kuda varu." And the man was walking. Some people looked at him and said, "Look at this. Old man is walking and the boy is on the donkey." Then the two realized, okay, this is not correct. So then the old man got on the donkey. The boy was walking. Then other people said, "Look at this. The young man, chinna paiyan, avan nadandu varan, ivar okkandirukar." Then they realized, no, this is not correct. Then they both got on the donkey. Then as they went along, they said, "Look at this. Poor animal, rendu perum adu mela okkandirukka. Idu enna anyayam?" And they said, "This doesn't make sense." So they both got down and they carried the donkey. Now as they carried the donkey, they crossed a bridge. They stumbled and the donkey fell into the river and died. The moral of the story is simple. If you try to live by someone else's agenda, you will eventually lose your ass. Which I'm afraid is what we are doing as a community. Living by someone else's agenda, and we have lost our sense of identity in the process. Sudarshan's book is a timely primer. Enough has been said about it, which serves to remind Sri Vaishnavas about the deep well that we draw from. We draw from an incredibly deep well. They may be successful, we may be successful in the United States or elsewhere. But the seeds of their success were sown a millennia ago. And they will be well served to be reminded of that, to be humbled by that ancestry and lineage, to draw strength from the deepest of roots as they reach for the highest of stars. I think it is our collective responsibility to put this book into as wide a circulation as possible. எல்லாரும் போய் 10 காப்பி வாங்குங்க. After all, it's going to Ahobila Madam. Enough has been said about that also, and distributed nicely. So this is my marketing spin for you, my friend. I am proud of you, Da. What you have done with this book is amazing. Keep writing, keep what you do. God be with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Shikhar-Swami. I would now request the author of the book, Mr. M.K.Sudarshan, to speak. Before he does so, I think he would like to distribute some mementos.
Sir, you have to excuse me. We're running out of time, but I'll make sure it's a short speech. Sri Lakshmi Narasimha Parabrahmane Namaha. Srimate Ramanujaya Namaha. Sri Nigamanta Mahadeshikaya Namaha. Srimate Sri Vancharagopa Shri Ranganaditindra Mahadeshikaya Namaha. The brief time that has been given to me, I do not wish to speak much about my book. The book must speak for itself without me having to say much about it. But on this occasion, I have to mention a few things. This book has 4 principal inspirations. The first inspiration is Sri Tirumala Nambi, the Acharya of my ancestors of Tirumala and Tirupati, going back all the way to the 10th century. I'm so proud that many members of the Tirumala Nambi Vamsham, the Tirumala Nambi family, are here among the audience. Thank you for being here. I'm so proud of all of you. The second inspiration is Sri Ramanujacharya, Sri Tirumala Nambi's nephew, whose millennial birth anniversary we are celebrating and commemorating this year in 2017. The third inspiration is the 13th century Sri Vaishnavite Acharya, Sri Vedanta Deshika. And last but not the least, the fourth inspiration for this book is Vaikuntavashi, Sri Mukkur Lakshmi Narasimhacharya, the famous Upanyasakar and Narasimha Upasakar, who lived amongst us until the year 2000 when he passed away. The book also has a dedication to the memory of my dear parents. My mother, Sangeeta Kalanadi Srimati Mani Krishna Swami, and my father, Sri M. Krishna Swami, known to many of his friends in Chennai as just MK. I have to also thank one other special person here in this audience whose contribution to the production of this book was invaluable. This book has 26 beautiful little illustrations, page illustrations, which actually relieve the tedium of reading this book. 720 pages, but these little illustrations have added a lot of value to this book. And the illustrations were done by Kumari Chitralekha Rangan. Could you please stand up? Please give her a hand. Where is Chitralekha Rangan? Ah, there she is. Please give her a hand. Please give her an applause. I now have to also express to Srimati Sheila Balaji and tell her how honored I am that she readily and graciously accepted to come here and be the chief guest and release my book. Thank you, madam. It will not be out of place to mention here that Srimati Sheila Balaji also has a connection with Sri Tirumala Nambi like me, but she is connected to him through marriage. I also have to express my deep, deep sense of gratitude to the three speakers here who have said such nice and kind words about my book. Thank you, Sri Vaidyanath. Thank you, Sri Sadagopan Iyengar. Thank you, Shekhar Swami. I also have to now tell you about two other persons in this audience here who gave me their appreciation in a very unusual sort of way. Not like this, but in a very unusual sort of way. Because this book is titled Unusual, so they gave me an appreciation in a very unusual sort of way. And I have to tell you two little stories and then I'll stop. The first story is actually about Sri Artichari himself. Early in December 2016, my wife and I, we went to Sri Chari's house to invite him and his gracious wife to the weddings of my son and my daughter. I took the opportunity of giving him an advance copy of my book, which had just been published in the US and released in the US by the publishers through Amazon. After we had pleasant conversation, I was leaving his house and he kept the book in his hand, and as he saw me out of the door, he said, "Sudarshan, I will definitely try and read this book, but let me be very honest with you. Books written in English on Sri Vaishnavism and Vedanta generally are written in very unattractive English." I went home that evening slightly disconcerted by Sri Chari's rather sharp and what I then thought was slightly overgeneralized statement. But next morning, my mobile rang and Sri Chari was on the line. Sri Chari said, "Sudarshan, I'm calling now to take back every single word I told you last evening. I've gone through the book, I've read a few chapters, and let me tell you that your style and English is very, very good. I apologize." Later that afternoon, he came to my house and he gifted me a few of the books that he had helped to publish. The reason why I'm telling you this story is two reasons. One reason is selfish. The other reason is gratitude. The selfish reason is that the fact that he found the language of the book to be good, it meets his standards, it means a lot to me. And now I can say with some confidence that if it means a lot to me, Chari's opinion, I'm sure it will mean a lot to you also, so that when you walk out of this room this morning, I'm sure you'll pick up your own copy of the book. Gratitude. Sri Chari need not have called me. He need not have gone out of his way to make amends for that sharp comment he made to me. But what it tells me is, it tells me that he is a man, the nobility of his character and the goodness of his heart. Sir, I thank you so much for giving me this platform to launch my book. The second story is a very short story. It's about another gentleman who is seated here in this audience. His name is Sri N.R. Sampath. Sri Sampath is a 20-year-old friend of mine. He was a banker in Kuwait. He is now retired. He lives happily with his wife in Mylapore. He does a lot of good things. The best thing he does in his life now in retirement is that he volunteers to go to the houses of the people in the neighborhood, senior citizens who are physically challenged, who can't see or walk. He goes to their houses, he offers them his time, he offers to have pleasant conversation with them, or he reads to them. He reads from newspapers, magazines, books, novels, Puranas. I had given him an advance copy of my book, and a week ago I asked him, sir, review illa, no feedback. Then he said, Sudarshan, I have no time to give you a review. I have no time to give you a feedback because I am busy. But I can tell you this. I took your book along with me to read to some of my wards. I read from passages from your book, chapters from your book. And all my wards have told me that they love your book and they find it so comforting. Now that to me is feedback which is worth its weight in gold. And because it is spontaneous, because it is genuine, more genuine than any book review that can be published in either the newspaper or a magazine. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you, first of all, thank you for your time. And I wish you the rest of the events today. Have a good laugh, humor, have lots of humor in your life, and keep laughing. Thank you so much.